Hello again. I'm going to return to the falsification of what they call, what the local authority called achieving best evidence, which was a falsified statement that was never signed nor seen by our elder daughter. And the reason being is it's very important to people to understand how the family court and the care system works in terms of the depraved nature of it, in terms of how children are psychologically abused and emotionally sterilized to turn them into essentially cash generative assets to be traded with private equity. Now, one thing I'll remind you of is nothing in this statement was ever investigated or proven. And its origins, to remind you, its origins were in some strangely curated notes written in a very, very odd style by elder daughter in quite a calculated method, between blue and red ink. It was almost like someone writing a story. Now, we will eventually publish those notes, but some of them were so ridiculous, they just got discounted, and those that they ran with, I deliberately challenged throughout the process, because I wanted to show how they were evolved and falsified effectively, and ultimately why this statement was never signed. Now, to go back to the commodification of it, the statement was sent to me by Paul Mahan. We'll talk about him a lot, and ultimately we'll be talking to the solicitors, his regulatory body, about his conduct as well, and others within South Tyneside. And it was sent, and one thing they do is they don't even write the child's name. This is a private letter, and it's got care proceedings and the initials of both child, which is what they do. They refer to them by initials. They don't even give them the dignity of writing their name. Your name is a key part of your identity, and really what he's showing here, and we'll publish this eventually, that they're really just commodifying human beings to monetize them, in this case children. Now, to return to this falsified statement, what I'm just doing, I'm going to pick on bits of it through a series of videos, and probably refer to the bits that allude to myself, and just to show you how it's falsified. Now, I'm going to focus on the disclosure method, and I did that in the previous one, where they tried to say that in essence, older daughter was feeding nonsense to two particular children at the time, young adults. Now I'll never name them because they were treated awfully and terribly manipulated by her, and they tried to, and in this they said they are still friends and so on and so forth. But it was more than that, because in the diaries that we found of older daughter, they were described very differently, and there were some very sinister entries in there, both regarding her younger sister. Very derogatory remarks. One day she will end up alone, so there's an ambition to detach her from her family and punish her, and also the boy. There was an asymmetry in terms of how she viewed their relationship, and she also made some very unkind comments about the girl. But because that didn't fit the narrative, Hudson, sort of knocked that evidence out. So we weren't able to defend ourselves, because in essence, this is building a narrative to support a trade, which is what I've spoken of throughout this series of videos. Now, listen to this. This is how badly this is written. So, my solicitor, which in case Laura Peel, who is major part in the falsification of this evidence, this ABE, and why it wasn't signed effectively. My solicitor has taken me through head of pastoral at the school, statement, describes what I said to her and another member of staff on the 3rd of December 2021, and what I said to her on the 6th and 7th of December. But look at this, listen to this, this is quite extraordinary. I don't remember exactly what I said to the teachers at the time, particularly that day, because we were challenging this, but there were lots of inconsistencies. In particular, there were shades of financial grooming in how they were pitching fees and places to her as well. We'll go into that further in the future. A lot happened in a short space of time, very short space of time. So what she's saying, she doesn't remember what she said to them. But I remember being called into the office. What I said was true. So you've got, I don't remember exactly what I said to the teachers, but I know it's true. So I don't know what I said, but I know it's true. So you can see how it's been concocted. Now, to remind you, the school our younger daughter was being bullied at the school by another girl who was a daughter of a head of department at the school, the senior school, in this case economics. And here's a reason: when she applied to join the school, she didn't make the first cut, if you like. She was put on a waiting list that, if somebody didn't take up the place, it would become open to her, which subsequently happened. And she was being taunted by this girl who we'd never disclosed this to, about being a spare, a reserve. And it was really, really cruel. We were raising it at the school and said, we don't know where this is coming from, because it seems to have manifested itself after our daughter attended the birthday party of the girl who's bullying her. And the school were very, very sensitive about this, because they were trying to clean up their image about safeguarding, because there'd been a very, very depraved and disgraceful incident a couple of years prior where a boy had been degraded and it'd been posted on social media, and they were very sensitive, trying to clean up their image. And the other thing as well is, when our older daughter had a broken arm, we'd sort of said to the school, look, please take care, because she'd been through a terrible time and there'd been a number of botched procedures, and eventually it had been put right by a doctor in Sunderland. But it was a last chance saloon. If it got knocked again, she would have had to have a plate and a pin in her arm. So we said, please do not take any risks with it, please. Let's just get through this. And there was an incident. I got called from work, and she'd fallen over in a drama lesson. So they'd had a girl with an arm in a sling, knowing how important it was not to knock it. And they had her doing drama in stockings on a shiny wooden floor. And what had happened, and I went to school, I was very, very unhappy with that. And I was challenging the deputy head of the school and saying, well, I don't understand why you even took this risk. Surely she could have just observed. What was the upside of her taking part in a drama lesson, knowing the downside was very, very severe? And he didn't like it. He was really, really struggling and trying to cover it. So the school saw this as an opportunity to hit back, because they knew on a few angles we were exposing some very, very serious safeguarding violations. And they wrote some very, very nasty CPOMs. They edited their CPOMs of what happened to try and cover this up, effectively, which came out in the legal proceedings. And they tried to say that I was so aggressive they were going to call the police or something like that, or someone else had to come. But then, strangely enough, the same person was inviting me back to the school to discuss my concerns. And I said to him, well, I'd rather do it on the phone because I'm really busy at the moment. We can do it on the phone. He said, no, come in. So the whole thing was just a pack of lies, and everybody, you got in a situation a bit like welfare, really. Everybody keeps their head down and tries to cover something, and that's the problem I had. I felt there was something wrong at Welltech. Nobody else would stand. I had nowhere to go. I eventually got out, spoke to the accountant, spoke to the FCA, and nobody did anything. And you see that side of human nature. And so you can see how this statement was a gross distortion. It was just narrative that was built to support trade. And you can see how badly our young daughter has been treated. Not only is she now been sort of taken from her parents, had subject to cultural genocide in terms of a Polish heritage being erased just to support this wicked trade. And everybody's let her down throughout this process, and she's just merely been treated as a commodity. And the more we challenge this, the more aggression my wife and I have experienced this with police state terror coming here, and I posted videos and emails showing that they came in here on a false pretext that I'd sort of vandalized somebody's car. The line of questioning revealed that instantly at the police station. And we're really starting to see how desperate and aggressive the authorities are becoming to try to cover this depraved trade in children. And it's the same trade that people will uncover in the rape gang scandal. It's where parents were constantly lobbying local authorities and the police, saying, "Look, we want our daughters back because they're being abused. Help us." And because they've been locked into this long-term trade, long-term cash-generative asset trade with private equity, the local authorities and the police were willing to let these girls continue to be abused rather than repatriate with their parents to break this wicked model and to save them from serial rape and abuse. And we've been probing ourselves, and it's quite interesting because we're running some exercises on the surveillance and censorship that they're putting on me, let alone the abuse that I've suffered, physical and psychological, and my wife too. Run a few exercises to see how they respond to certain actions, and it's been very interesting to see how they have been reacting and the level of censorship they're going to. And it really, unfortunately, shows how desperate they are to cover this, and they're trawling through the devices they stole from my wife and I to try to come up with something to try to shut this down. But the reality is they don't understand that it's the disclosures that we were going to make are actually not even on those devices, and they won't stop it anyway. They will try to harm me. They will try to concoct stories against me and try to take my liberty away, try and say I'm this, try and say I'm that. But the reality is they're not going to stop it. And it's really, really interesting to see the level they will go to try and shut this depraved trade, try and cover this depraved trade. These are serious, serious crimes against humanity. Against Polish citizens. And unfortunately, they're not going to succeed. Take care. Bye.